Hello friends, good afternoon. Optical activity. When a plane polarized light passing through the solution of the certain organic substances like the glucose, lactic acid, the plane of polarized light get rotated through a certain angle. This property of the certain organic substances to rotate the plane for polarized light towards the right or towards the left is called as optical activity. Specific rotations. Optical rotation is proportional to the concentration of solutions and the path lengths of these solutions. Next point is the enantiomers, the images which as the non-superimposable mirror images which is called as enantiomers and the chirality to the enantiomers. Their descriptions are given here of the enantiomers with examples are given with the diastereomers and the enantiomers. Both are the opposite to each other. There are characteristics, important chiralities, optical activities of these compounds are theirs. This to explaining this all these details in the video formats. This is the characteristic of the diastereomers.
What are the enantiomers? So when we are dealing with the term enantiomers, we remember that these compounds are the stereoisomers which are mirror image of each other. So suppose let us take one compound like this, and this compound is not stereoactive because this carbon is attached with the two similar groups like the CH3 groups. Since the carbon is attached with the similar groups, so this carbon is not a chiral carbon or asymmetric carbon, so optically it is not active. Since optically it is not active, it cannot form the enantiomers. Now let us take another structure like this, and if we put a mirror between these two, we can see that both of these structures are mirror images of each other. Now we know that enantiomers are the mirror images, and here we are going to see these two structures which are again the mirror images. But these structures are not the enantiomers because they are not optically active. So why they are not the enantiomers? Even these two structures are mirror images of each other, but these structures are superimposable. That means both of these structures are same and not different compounds. So every object will have its mirror image. It may not represent the enantiomers. Enantiomers are the stereoisomers which are non-superimposable mirror images. So what is here the non-superimposability? When we try to match the two mirror images just by rotating or flipping the structures, still we will not get any identical structures. Then those structures are called as non-superimposable. So if a carbon is attached to the four different groups, it will give a mirror image which is non-superimposable. So that's why for optical activity, the carbon should be attached with the four different groups. So now we can conclude that enantiomers are the non-superimposable mirror images. But here, what is the non-superimposability? So in order to understand the non-superimposability, let us take one of the familiar example. So this is the right hand and this is the left hand. And we know that the right hand and left hand are the mirror image of each other. And even the right and left hands are non-superimposable. So they're just like the enantiomers. So let us try to match the right hand with the left hand and let us see what happens. Suppose if we try to match like this, you can see that the little finger of one hand is at the thumb of the other hand. So they are not having the same configuration. Now let us rotate this hand and let us try to match. So when we rotate and try to match, you can see that the thumb of one hand is again at the thumb of the other hand. So if we see this clearly, we can see that they are having the same positions, but the alignment is different. Fingers in the above structure are upward and the fingers in the below structure are downward. So still they are not identical. So now let us try to flip the hand. When we flip the hand, let us see what happens. So let us try to flip the hand, and when we flip, we will get the hand like this. Now you can see that this hand is having the same orientation with its mirror image. The thumb as well as all the fingers are in the upward direction and at the similar positions. But still, these two hands are not identical and non-superimposable, because here in this hand, what are the side we are going to show is the palmar side. So that means it is we are going to represent the palm, the soft side of the hand, and this is the dorsal side, that is the hard side of the hand or opposite side of the palmar side. So even these two hands are in the same orientation, but still they are not identical because their facings are different. So in this way, if we try to rotate the hand and flip the hand, still we will not get any identical structures. So they are non-superimposable. Now let us use this concept and let us check what happens with the structures. Let us compare the mirror image of the structures by rotating and flipping, and whether we will get the same structure or a different structure. Now let us take the previous example. The carbon is attached with the two similar groups like the CH3 groups, and let us take its mirror image. Now we are going to rotate this structure by 180 degrees. When we rotate, the horizontal groups are in the same position, but the vertical groups are in the opposite way. So let us flip this structure. So when we try to flip this structure, we will get the structure like this. You can see that it gives the same structure as its mirror image. So these two structures are superimposable. Now let us take another structure. Here the carbon is attached to the four different groups. You can observe that chlorine, COOH, CH3 and hydrogen. So this carbon is the chiral carbon or asymmetric carbon. Since the chiral carbon is present, so this can show the optical activity and it can form the enantiomers. So now if you take the mirror image of the structure, we can represent like this. We can easily write the mirror images because you can see that the COH group which is nearer from the mirror, again the second structure COH group is again nearer from the mirror. Similarly, CH3 group which is farther from the mirror is again in the second structure, it is farther from the mirror. So we can write the mirror image like this. Now let us compare whether both of the structures are superimposable or non-superimposable. So let us rotate the first structure by 180 degrees. So when we rotate again, we will get the horizontal groups in a similar configuration, but vertical groups are not in the same configuration. So let us flip this structure. So when we try to flip this structure, we can get the structure like this. Now what about these two structures? The two structures are looking similar, but actually they are non-superimposable. So how it is possible? In the previous example, we have seen that they are superimposable, but here we are going to say that they are non-superimposable. Now let us represent a molecule with the ball and stick model. So here let us consider that the group that is shown by the red color is above the plane, and the group that is shown by the light yellow color is below the plane, and the two other groups which are shown by the green and blue color are within the plane. Now this model can be represented on the plain paper by using the solid wedge and dashed line configuration. Here the hydrogen is attached by solid wedge, which indicates it is above the plane. Similarly, the CH3 group which is attached by dashed line indicates it is below the plane. Now by using this solid wedge and dashed line configuration, let us see the superimposability of the enantiomers. Now let us take this solid wedge and dashed line projection and let us compare the superimposability of this structure. All we have seen, this carbon is attached to the four different groups, so it is optically active. And let us take its mirror image. So this is the mirror image. You can see that again the mirror image, the CH3 group which is nearer to the mirror, again here CH3 group is nearer to the mirror. And while we take the mirror image, what are the groups below the plane are still below the plane. So CH3 which is below the plane in the first structure is again below the plane in the second structure. So now these are the two mirror images, and here we have to check the superimposability. So let us rotate the first structure by 180 degrees. So when we are going to rotate this structure, we will not get any similar configuration. And then let us try to flip the structure. So when we try to flip the structure, we will get a similar structure but not the identical structure. You can see that the COOH and chlorine are going to be oriented in similar way. When we see the hydrogen, here the hydrogen is attached above the plane, but here the hydrogen is attached below the plane. Similarly, the configuration of the CH3 is below the plane in the previous structure, but here above the plane in the first structure. In this way, these two structures are not having the same configuration, so they are non-superimposable. These two structures are non-superimposable mirror images, so they can be called as enantiomers. Now let us see what is the criteria for enantiomers. Just we have seen that for two mirror images to exist as enantiomers, they should have asymmetric center. So asymmetric center is the carbon which is attached to the four different groups. For example, if you take a structure like this, so this is one of an amino acid, that is the alanine. So in the alanine, the carbon is attached to the four different groups, so it is optically active. So alanine can be present as a pair of enantiomers. Now let us take another structure like this. So here, if you see the second carbon is attached to carboxylic acid, hydrogen, OH group and another large group. So this carbon is an asymmetric center, and we can also see that the third carbon is also an asymmetric center. So in this structure we can see the two asymmetric centers, and if you take the mirror image of this structure, we can represent like this. So here the first structure is having the two asymmetric centers and it is having a mirror image. Can we call these two structures as enantiomers? So even here the asymmetric center is present, but in the first structure you can observe a plane of symmetry. So these two structures are not optically active and they are superimposable. So they cannot be called as enantiomers. Now let us check why they are superimposable. So now if you take this structure and its mirror image, and let us rotate this structure and check the superimposability. So if we try to rotate like this by 180 degrees, we can simply get the second structure. That means because of plane of symmetry, these two structures are easily superimposable with rotation by 180 degrees. So particularly this type of compound which is having the plane of symmetry is called as meso compound. So meso compound cannot exist as a pair of enantiomers. Now let us refine the criteria for enantiomers. Already we have seen one of the criteria for enantiomers is the asymmetric center, but this is not sufficient. The enantiomer should not have any plane of symmetry. So whenever a structure is having an asymmetric center without any plane of symmetry, it can exist as a pair of enantiomers. Now let us see the properties of the enantiomers. So if we see the physical properties of the enantiomers, they will have identical physical properties. So physical properties like the boiling point, melting point and solubility, all these are same in both of the enantiomers. So enantiomers cannot be separated easily because they are having the identical boiling point, melting point and solubility. Similarly, the enantiomers will have identical chemical properties. So they will show the same types of chemical reactions as well as same rate of chemical reactions until unless the reagent is chirally active. Now let us see what are the diastereomers. So diastereomers are the stereoisomers which are not mirror images of each other. Enantiomers are the mirror images and diastereomers are not mirror images of each other. Let us take one structure like this, and here you can see that it is having the two asymmetric centers and it is not having any plane of symmetry. So this compound can exist as a pair of enantiomers. If we write its mirror image, the structure will be like this. So these two structures are different structures because they are not having any plane of symmetry. Now if we take another structure, here you can see that even it is having the asymmetric centers, but it is having the plane enantiomers, so it will exist as only single structure. So in this way, for this compound, even it is having the two asymmetric centers, only three structures are possible. So let us indicate these structures like 1, 2, 3. Now what is the relation between the first and second structures? The first and second structures are the mirror image of each other and they are non-superimposable, so they are the enantiomers. But if we compare the first and third structure as well as second and third structure, both of these pairs are not the mirror images. So since they are not the mirror images, they can be called as diastereomers. So diastereomers are the stereoisomers which are not mirror images of each other. So structure 1 and 3 as well as structure 2 and 3 are the diastereomeric pairs. Now what are the properties of the diastereomers? Since the diastereomers are not the mirror image of each other, they will have different physical properties. So they will have a different boiling point, melting point and solubility, and since their physical properties are going to differ, the diastereomers can be easily separated. In order to separate the enantiomers, we can use a reagent which will convert the enantiomers into diastereomers so that diastereomers can be easily separated. Similarly, diastereomers will have similar chemical properties. Here you have to remember the term similar, but they are not the identical chemical properties because they are having the similar functional groups. They will have the similar chemical reactions, but they are not identical. That means they are not identical in the rate of the reaction as well as yield of the reaction. So diastereomers will have different physical properties and somewhat similar chemical properties. Now if we compare the enantiomers with the diastereomers, enantiomers are the mirror image of each other, whereas diastereomers are not mirror image of each other. And enantiomers are non-superimposable mirror images, and diastereomers, since they are not mirror images, they are also non-superimposable. And enantiomers are optically active because we know they are, if one is dextro and there will be levo, so they are optically active. But the diastereomers may be either optically active or inactive. In the diastereomers, one of the isomer may be optically active, or two of the isomers may be optically active, or one of the isomer may be optically inactive. For example, if you take a case of mesoisomer, mesoisomer is optically inactive, but still it can form a diastereomeric pair with an optically active isomer. And next, enantiomers are having identical physical and chemical properties, whereas diastereomers are having different physical properties and similar chemical properties. So that's why the enantiomers are not easy to separate, but diastereomers can be easily separated. So in this way, what are the stereoisomers which are forming the non-superimposable mirror images are called as enantiomers, and what are the stereoisomers which are not the mirror images are called as diastereomers. So that's about this enantiomers and diastereomers. If you subscribe to our channel,